Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. The content of today's show may be difficult to listen to. It might be sensitive to some listeners. But if we are to protect our youth, our veterans, and their families, it is vital that we hear it. Since the pandemic, there has been an increased focus on the mental health of Americans. As a result of the trauma they experience, more and more Americans are turning to suicide as a way out. According to the CDC, gun suicide rates have reached an all-time high for the second year in a row. With the number of households owning firearms constantly growing, the risk of death by suicide triples as access to firearms is easier. While we know suicide is not the answer to the pain and trauma a loved one may feel, we also have to remember it is that pain and trauma that is preventing the person from thinking rationally. There are a number of factors that need to be considered when discussing mental health, and this show has dealt with a lot of them. Today, we discuss a statistic that is preventable: suicide by firearm. To help navigate this difficult topic, we welcome Colleen Creighton, Director of End Family Fire at Brady, formerly the Brady Campaign, and Army veteran Tom Cruz, who has served our country for over 25 years. Welcome to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC. And thank you in advance for your bravery in sharing your stories.
Thank you for covering the topic and for inviting both of us today.
No, it's my pleasure. I think it's something that's very timely and something that we definitely need to discuss. And I'm going to actually start with you, Colleen, because there was one statistic that I came across that I found really alarming and fascinating, that with all of the mass shootings that we've had in this country, that is it correct that more than half of the gun deaths in this country are attributed to suicide?
Exactly. And that unfortunately never makes news. And we need to know that. So we lose more than 28,000 individuals a year to firearm suicide. Overall, to suicide, it's just over 48,000. So it's about 54% firearm suicide. But again, no one is talking about means, right? You know, it's mass shootings, like you said, gets all the attention, or a terribly kind of sensationalistic cases. But every day we're losing 67 individuals to firearm suicide. That's each and every day here in the U.S.
Wow. That is a remarkable statistic. Like you said, it's something we definitely need to speak more about. And I understand that that's exactly what you are doing through the ad campaign. So please talk to us a little bit about what this End Friendly Fire program is all about and what prompted its development.
Sure. So End Family Fire is a campaign really dedicated to stopping both unintentional and suicides, stopping injury and suicide from taking place in the home. And a lot of this is based on someone getting access to a gun when they shouldn't have, whether that's a young kid that finds the parent's gun that's not safely stored, or whether it's someone in your household that you know is in crisis and should not have access to a gun, and unfortunately ends up finding the gun and taking their life. So End Family Fire is really about stopping family fire, which is injury or death resulting from an unsecured firearm in the home. And
as far as the different stories that are part of the campaign, and some of them were really, really heart-wrenching. I was able to view a few of them. How were those individual stories selected?
First and foremost, we interviewed a number of individuals out there. And one of the things you wanted to make sure is, were they comfortable telling their story? Because the last thing you want to do is throw out a campaign, have people tell their story, and then re-trigger them, or, bring up something that they're not, and then put them in peril or harm moving forward. And so what we did is, it was a strong vetting process. And then we resulted on 7 individuals who still own guns. So they went through these cases. There's a variety of different stories and perspective that they went through, but each and every one of them still owns a gun, keeps it safely stored. And what they're really talking about is how safe storage is key now to keeping them and their family safe.
And I'm sure, aside from just keeping the gun safely stored, there are some other mechanisms that they have to go through and some other strategies that they have to employ themselves, because what's to keep them from just pulling all those pieces together again to commit the act. So like I said, I'm sure there are some other strategies that they have to also go through that accompany that, so that they aren't tempted to use those firearms. And so, Mr. Cruz, I'm going to bring this question to you and ask you to kind of, as much as you can, well, first, again, thank you for your service to our country, but also as much as you can, share with us your story. What's the story behind your story? What is the story you would like to share with us with your own journey with suicide prevention?
So thank you again for having me on, and thank you again for and Family Fire for having me on this story and being able to do all this. It's a great honor. For me, I did 26 years in the Army, so very comfortable with weapons, firearms, multiple kinds. And then, yes, I do own one. And I had an incident. So like my weapon, my firearm used to be loaded by my bedside all the time. You know, my children were trained in I've taken all of them to the range. They all know the seriousness of the weapons, firearms, never messed with them. But one day, 3 November 2010, I had an argument with my fiance, which is now my wife. She's featured in the story. And yeah, I snapped and I don't remember much. I held her hostage. I then was going to kill the both of us. And the only reason I'm alive and she's alive is her ability to talk us out of that situation. So she's really the hero of our story. She was able to talk me down and then get me to take my my firearm apart, and then brought me outside the house. And then I was able to go get the help that I needed. I was able to luckily stay in the military, break stigmas within the military. I was able to stay in with mental health disorders. I was able to stay in with a top secret clearance. And so I didn't take it just that lightly. I didn't just take that as, oh, wow, I got one over on, the police or one on the Army. Is then we decided to go share our story. But I did have to change how I kept my firearm in the house. And it wasn't really for my family too, but it was really for myself. I had to look at why, it used to be loaded, sitting on my nightstand, at the ready all the time. After my incident, I realized that I'm the enemy now. I'm the force inside the house that I was trying to protect my family from on the outside. And so for me, I had to put mechanisms in place. And so not only before that incident, I was training my family on how to use the firearms. Now, after the incident, I'm training them how to be wary of it being locked up, of time and distance, of safety plans with me, of what issues that I'm going through. So my weapon now is still the same firearm I had before, but it's now dismantled as far as it's the magazine. There's no rounds in it. The magazine and the ammunition are not in the same spot as my firearm. My firearm is locked up in a case with two locks on it, with keys separated from the case, separated from the ammunition and the magazine. My family now knows the weapon is now in the closet. It's not close to the nightstand anymore. My family knows where it's at. They also understand the time distance between, if in the event I do have another issue. We're hoping not, obviously, but if something does happen, they understand that there's time and distance between me and the weapon, me and the keys to the weapon. They know how to be able to leave or help me out, to be able to get me out of the whatever funk I'm in, whatever issue I'm going through at the time. So we've had to switch. And with this program and this campaign, it was just immediately aligned with what my family and I have already been doing. So this was perfect for this. And I've had to train my son now, who's 10 years old, a whole different mindset for firearms and military, and what I've learned in the military, where now he's an asset to the family and an asset to schools on gun safety.
And I'm glad you mentioned your son, and I didn't know that he was 10, but I think that helps as well, because as I mentioned, a lot of households are increasingly bringing guns into the home, whether it's for protection or whatever other reason they're doing it. And more children are becoming exposed to the guns and so forth. So what are some of the things that you told your son to, as far as how to be careful around the guns. And like you said, I know you said you took him to the gun range, so I'm sure he knows how the proper way to hold one and not to point it at anybody and not to show off with it. But even before that, what was the process that you had to take him through to get him to that stage where he is today?
So before, it was like you said, I would take him with BB guns and small things and learn him how to hold it, learn the respect of it, learn how to load it, unload it, take it apart and all that. And then taught him, what I learned in the military, showed him videos of what I've gone through, the actual, combat situations. And what's funny about, him is he was born 2 years to the date of the incident. So my date is 3 November 2010. He was born 1 November 2012. So for me, that day, it doesn't have to be dark, but I also have educated him both in my triggers, in what to look for, and for him to be able to identify within me how to help me out if he sees me twitching, if he sees me staring off. And that goes with same thing with the weapon. The weapon is locked up, so he knows that, it's not something to play with, that it's a he doesn't know where the keys are. He's not aware of where the ammunition or the magazine is. It's kind of hard to hide a case. It's obvious it's a case, but I can put other mechanisms in place for him not to put all the pieces together or have access to it. The only people that know where the keys are myself and my wife, and anybody that we feel safe on the outside that we've incorporated into my safety plan in the event that something that, even if my family's not comfortable, that somebody we trust can come and safely take my weapon and store it at their location or at a spot until the household is comfortable with me having it back in there. And he's part of that process. We have not kept him out of the loop. He is part of every family decision. He is part of all, obviously we have to say so, but I want him to feel comfortable with making decisions and knowing the seriousness of having a firearm in the house and what the safety plan is for that, and how we're going to act in the event that I have another episode. So he's incorporated in all that. Not the life that I want for him at 10 years old, but I'd rather have him to be educated than misunderstood, hear something from social media, hear something from the streets, from school, or just not know how to act. I'd rather be the one teaching them.
And I'm glad you went there with as far as the education piece. And Colleen, I'm going to bring this back to you for a moment. Can you talk to us a little bit about what do the numbers say as far as children and firearms, whether they discover the guns accidentally in their house, or as far as just injuries and or deaths that occur because there are guns in the household?
Sure. So overall, there's 4.6 million kids live in a home with an unlocked and loaded gun in the house. That's 4.6 million kids. About 2/3 of gun suicides for teens are by an unlocked gun. So basically, we lose every year 732 kids and youth to firearm suicide, which is outstanding. So, I mean, you're talking about all the potential, you're talking about all those lives just from something, they shouldn't have had access to, but they had access to the firearm and they got it and they took their own life. That 732 is way too many, but about 2/3 of all firearm suicide involve an unlocked gun for kids. So, I mean, we're talking, this is a simple step that anyone in their house can take. And just by the sheer numbers, how many lives they could save.
Now, either one of you can answer this question and I'm going to sound a little bit like devil's advocate here for a minute, because I'm sure I have some listeners out there who are thinking, well, if I purchased my gun for household protection, and now you're telling me that I need to keep the ammunition in one place and keep the magazine in another place and keep the gun locked up someplace and the keys to the chest someplace else. By the time somebody breaks into my house, for me to go and put all these pieces together, there's no telling what that person could have done. So why would I want to keep my gun dismantled when the whole purpose for me of buying it was for household protection? What would you say to something like that?
I'll let Tom talk about the expertise, but overall, if you look at the numbers, you're more than 20% more likely to be injured by the firearm in your home than you are to be able to stop an intruder. So I think this is a fallacy that a lot of people think, but home invasions don't take place nearly as much as suicides and injury within the home from a gun take place. So that's something that we're trying to really reach out and let gun owners know that We get it. We understand that you're doing it for safety, but safety also includes the people in your house, not just those externally trying to break in.
I agree. What she said is spot on. And being from the military and having that mindset of always, it's an extension of myself. It's an extension of my hand. It's, it's comfortable. I had to change my mentality after my incident. And most of us that are dealing with mental health illnesses just have to understand that, yes, we can still protect our family. Now, taking it to the extent of taking it ammo now with the magazine, taking the weapon apart, yeah, that's probably not necessary. I mean, you could probably put the ammo and the magazine together and then the weapon separated from those two. So in the event you're really that paranoid of being able to put it quickly, if you're really good with your stuff and you know how to do it in the event, you still could be able to get to it. But like Lee said, the likelihood of the event of that happening when you've already had an incident yourself, like for me, having an incident already, I feel that I'm the enemy now instead of the outside. So what am I going to do? Am I going to worry about somebody on the outside, or now do I protect my family, myself, my community? Because when my incident happened, it was locked down the community. I put my family in jeopardy. There was a lot more, and it was from the inside, not the outside. So for us, we have to protect everything around us, but still have our awareness and still have the protection we need. But you've just got to find that balance. It's all about the balance and what you're comfortable and your family's comfortable and everybody else around you to do to make sure you're doing both.
Now, we also know that there is a fever pitch as far as what to do about gun safety in this country, and maybe do we need to make the laws tougher and so forth and so on. And no matter who you speak to, you're going to find one extreme or the other, one side or the other. So could this ad campaign kind of be a way to put pressure on Congress to make tougher laws, or is the focus really more on the prevention side as far as the dealing with the mental health issues of the gun issue?
Right now with End Family Fire, we stay nonpartisan, non-political, because the minute you even near that line, it's like a lightning rod, right? Everyone has an opinion and they're ready to just cut and, put the blinders down and not listen. So this campaign strictly stays out of politics for that reason. And we include, it's unusual because we include gun owners in the conversation. We're not saying like guns are terrible and take them out. Like what we're saying with End Family Fire is, we know you have a gun in the home. We know a lot more people, especially after COVID. If you look at the numbers of guns in the purchase, I think it was up by 64%. I saw that one study said. So there's a lot more guns in circulation. Our whole mission is just to make sure gun owners just keep them safely stored and away from the hands that shouldn't have it. And so right now, too, the other aspect of this is there are so many different ways to store that gun. There's the safes that we've all been talking about. There's the boxes. There's all this biometric. There's really cool like tables, that look like nightstands with hidden drawers. There's a lot of new apps and things that people are using with holsters that unlock and lock through different variations in your phone. There's cable locks. I mean, there's so many different ways to store that. Like Tom said earlier, each gun owner is going to have their preferred way. We're not mandating you have to do it this way or have to do it that way. We're just saying do it. You can figure out which way works best for you.
And Tom, I'm going to throw this one back over to you. What are some measures that you would like to see put in place to more effectively monitor our veterans, especially those coming back from war or even serving locally, domestically, who are going to experience some sort of trauma in their careers? What measures would you like to see put in place to support them so that they don't fall into a situation like you did?
I think this campaign's hitting it right on the spot. I like why I'm a big fan of this campaign is because it is non-political. It is not. It's more awareness. It's more just getting out there and on this. If you saw some of the stories, there's 3 veterans on the stories that are sharing them. I think it's just more awareness, and I think it's more campaigns like this that need to get out to the bases, to the local communities, then up through the states, because again, it's the messaging. It's all about people that have lived this, like myself, that have lived with firearms and then had an incident, and now we've adjusted it. I think with this campaign and what we do on the side, can make a big difference. That it just shows the people another option. Like Colleen said, there's so many ways of of securing it now. It's crazy. And so there's not really an excuse for us to say why we can't. And so I love, that's why I like this campaign. It's just, it works well to be at every level, from down to the communities to a base it needs to get to, and then having people go out and promote this campaign and sit there and say, hey, this is why, us veterans need to do this. And then for me, it's not a big issue for me to get fired questions or asked why, because I'm doing what's best for myself, my family, my community.
For those who may not be gun owners, because I'm sure there's a lot of my listeners are listening, well, I don't have a gun, so this doesn't apply to me. How do we get them to be involved? How can they help in this campaign? Or what role can they play in this campaign as well?
No, absolutely. I think your child is still going to visit another friend's house, and that house may have guns, right? Go visit a relative, vacation, things like that. So there's actually, the first day of summer is known as Ask Day, and it stands for Asking Saves Kids, ASK. And what we're trying to do with that campaign is normalize this conversation about asking if there's a gun in the home. So I think exactly what you're saying, you may not be a gun owner, but at some point your kids or your family members are going to go to a home where there is a gun. And you should know if there's a gun in the home and make sure that it's safely stored. And if it's not, at least have that conversation with your child, about guns. If they see a gun, if they find a gun, proper gun safety and things like that. So it all comes down to asking and education.
Yeah, I think that campaign was the commercial had the parents visiting a house and there was a tiger in the house or something like that. So it was like, you do it, and they were asking the questions. You do have the tiger locked up and this, that, and the other. So it's basically attributing that to the guns. So you do have your guns safely stored someplace, and the children aren't going to be able to have access to it and all of that. So I think that, like you said, is really important to understand that, and we're a community. We have to understand that we are a community and we need to support each other.
And I think destigmatize all of this, because what we're saying is it's okay to have a conversation about guns. It's okay to have a conversation about suicide. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Where can our listeners go to get more information on this important campaign and to be able to help those who may need it?
Sure. Absolutely. First stop would be endfamilyfire.org. That has all of the PSAs that went out. You'll see all of our radio spots. You'll see more information about how you can keep your family and friends safe. But again, I also want to reiterate, this is a tough topic. It's triggering for many people. So if you are struggling, if you have a friend or someone is struggling, please reach out. 988 is out there, and there's a lot of other crisis and mental health resources for you.
Tom, what would you say to your fellow veterans who may feel that, I've been trained to be the be all end all and to stop everything, and the one to be the superhero, the Captain America type and so forth. What do you tell that person when they clearly have a mental health issue that they don't want to face?
I had to stop looking at it being about me. I had to really start looking at my surroundings. I had to look at the bigger picture, my family, my children, my community, and it wasn't about me. And so I would tell my fellow veterans to just really be cognizant, be aware, be educated, and educate those around you. Educate your family, educate your children, and then educate the community around you, so that in the event you're part of an incident or you are going to help in an incident, you're fully aware of how to do that and smartly, and be able to solve the solution instead of make the worse.
Colleen, I don't know if you have the statistics handy, but could you tell us about what percentage of, or how many students we have been found with weapons, carrying weapons, maybe into schools themselves? Because I know that has been going on the rise as well, with students bringing guns to schools. So do we have those statistics available as far as the number of students who have brought guns, or just the number of guns that have appeared in schools?
Not yet. That's something we're working on finding. Along with the other aspect of this, we're looking at how many school days have been impacted by gun violence. How many lockdowns, how many, that school has been closed because there was a threat. All of that numbers. We're working right now with some of the school districts to try to get a handle on what those look like. Because the other thing we want to show is, it's not just one incident. One incident has a lot of implications down the line. And you're talking about, one school system's impacted, it affects everything else around it. And so I think that number is very important to have. And fingers crossed. We're working on trying to get it.
And if each of you had just in about a minute try to sum up, if each of you had to leave our audience with one final thought about gun safety and preventing suicide by firearm, what would that thought be?
I think for me, research shows access to a gun in a time of crisis increases the chance of suicide by 300%. So by decreasing that time and space between someone in crisis and their gun, you're saving their life. And
mine would be that, regardless of having a firearm, I still have my firearm. I've had to have a new look. I've had to be educated, educate those around me, and think the bigger picture. And it isn't just about me. It is about the time, space, distance, and working with every resource that you have around you to make sure that you're keeping everyone around you safe, to include yourself.
Well, we would certainly like to thank our guest today, Colleen Creighton, Director of End Family Fire at Brady, formerly the Brady Campaign, and 25-year Army veteran Tom Cruz, for coming on to our show today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and if you or anyone you know is experiencing some kind of crisis and has contemplated suicide, please dial 988 on your mobile phone or visit longislandcrisiscenter.org to speak to someone and get help. Thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.